Tonight, Trump pushes tensions high, teasing war.
All Iranian patriots keep protesting, take over your institutions if possible, and all I say to them is help is on its way.
And then backing down, and then deciding what else to dial up to 11 and walk away from. Related, Lindsey Graham's blue balls are so gorging, experts aren't sure if they can be drained at his local highway rest stop, with Arizona grinder users warned about approaching his swollen testicles. Also tonight, new banner from the Department of War features soldiers covering up their post-war opium addictions. Later in the evening, a new warning to protesters not to turn back and look at the guy who just pepper sprayed you. And lastly, will Trump's receiving of a Nobel Peace Prize help motivate him to conduct more war in Venezuela? But before we start this evening's broadcast, let's check in with the old intro guy who's been moved to field reporting. Why do you guys have me reporting from a field? I don't get it. I'm outdoors. Who cares? What am I doing out here? I'm supposed to cover the hard-hitting stuff. That producer man ruined my career. Kept unplugging things, stealing my wig. I'll get my vengeance.
All right, and we're back, everybody, for a fresh, brand new episode of the Run Your Mouth podcast. Totally refreshed and very happy and excited to be here. For today's episode, we're out in Arizona, just outside this men's rest stop, hoping to see if Lindsey Graham shows up and we might be able to get an interview. Did I already say that and you guys were able to hear it on the last one? I don't know. I don't know what I said. I don't know what got captured. I don't know what was muted. This is awkward. For everyone listening tomorrow in the future on Spotify, don't worry about it. There's nothing to see on YouTube. There's no reason to go and see why I'm Dan Bongino crashing out right now. Anyways, there's no reason to delay. There's no reason to stall. Let's just hop right into all the Iran things I think I already said. But luckily, you know, there's a lot to cover because there was a non-war. There was a non-war and a Trump victory. Perhaps his greatest victory yet. Because not only did we not have to go to war with them, we didn't even have to strike them this time. And we were apparently able to save the Iranian people from the mass deaths that would have happened if we didn't engage in a non-strike. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to level with you. I'm going to level with everybody here who can hopefully hear me on what Red Room is calling the Mulligan episode. When it comes to Iran, I don't really know. I don't know if this was larger protests than what they usually have with protests, if you had more protests on the side of the regime, how many people were killed in these protests, what Donald Trump was planning on striking. But it does seem to be another incredible example of what we've talked about on the show before, which is war theater, which is that behind the scenes, it would appear that everybody is actually able to get along. They're out here, they're lobbing bombs at each other. They're telling us that nobody can get along. Everybody hates each other. We're all going to die. If we don't invade this country, we don't nuke that country. It's all going to shit and we're all going to die. And then behind the scenes, none other than Putin seems to be able to broker peace between Iran and Israel. I mean, Donald Trump's out here. He's getting the Nobel Peace Prizes, but apparently Putin, he's on the important phone calls that both, you know, Iran and Israel, they can't possibly get along. Israel knows that if they don't strike Iran, at some point, Iran's going to get that nuclear warhead and they're going to take out Israel, and that they are sworn to Israel's destruction. And that's why they propagate terrorism in the region. But as long as Putin steps in and can broker that it's not the right, you know what it is? It's like they both need a better training camp. They kind of exhausted themselves in the last skirmish, and there wasn't enough promotion behind this fight. It kind of sprung up a little bit too quickly, and they can both agree now's not the time for the big show. So let's all chill out a little bit, and then we can have this war down the line. We don't have to do it right now. Let's do it pay-per-view. Let's make sure that we got the promotion behind this. Let's wait for, the Venezuela thing just happened. People are still thinking about that. Russia, Ukraine still going on. China, Taiwan's going on. Let's wait for this to not be a crowded marketplace. And when we can really get all of our promotion behind it and make sure that everyone's watching and engaged in this, and then they realize how important both of us are, and maybe we can both walk away with more United States cash on the back end of this as they pay us to start getting along. All right. So apparently Donald Trump, he was out there letting the nice people of Iran, informing them to get out there and protest even more because the United States, we're coming to save you. We got your backs. And listen, unlike us, they haven't lived with Donald Trump. They haven't dated Donald Trump, so they don't know that he's a liar. They don't know that he's not showing up. And hopefully not too many people got out there thinking this is our big opportunity to overthrow this regime because the American government's showing up. Because I think Donald Trump thought, hey, let's do another flashy strike. Let's declare victory. And then people told him, hey, we don't have escalation dominance. And if we strike Iran, they're going to do these things, and we're going to have a full-scale war. And then Donald Trump said, you know what? I'll do one better. I won't strike them, and I'll just declare victory anyways. And everyone's like, hey, man, you just got a Nobel Peace Prize, so you know what you're doing here. If you can just declare that you had peace without doing anything, that sounds better than, possibly doing a strike that ramps up some things. And then, it seems like the easier path to declaring victory is just doing nothing at all and then pretending that they were spooked of you and that they were going to engage in mass hangings and that they didn't because you've declared victory. So anyways, at least at the moment, we're sidelined thanks to the noble efforts of Putin, who nobody can trust and nobody can get along with. Keep in mind, Putin, he's the world's biggest enemy for everybody, and we need all the nations to get on board. We got to make sure that we keep him out of Greenland. We got to send NATO troops in there. We got to make sure that this guy doesn't take all of Ukraine. But behind the scenes, apparently he can get on a nice, calm phone call, and he can tell the people, hey, let's all chill out, and let's wait till we can actually get some promotion behind this. So let's take a look at a few of the videos of statements that people have made since Donald Trump walked back striking Iran. But here was Donald J. Trump, bold words: Iranian patriots, keep protesting, take over your institutions, save the names of the killers and abusers. They will pay a big price. I have canceled all meetings with Iranian officials until the senseless killing of protesters stops. Help is on its way. MEGA, President Donald J. Trump. And so for all of you guys, I don't know, what's the 4D chess here of Donald Trump's promise that help is on the way? You think he's going to make good on that one? Or do you think maybe this is more in line with my theory of Donald Trump, where it's grand statements, ADD, move on to the next thing? And this was Ted Cruz, also very excited about the possibility of the United States of America, I guess, striking Iran. Or what is the new way that we're going to help Iran if it's not doing strikes on Iran? I guess their other plan is more sanctions, which I don't think help the people of Iran. Or maybe we're going to send more funds to Israel and go, hey, Iranian people, you're welcome. We send more funds over to Israel so Israel feels safer and they're not going to strike you guys as much. Maybe that's what they mean by helping Iran. I guess it's a little bit unclear. But Red Rum, hey, did it so I can say MEGA, please. All right, I respect that comment. Here's Ted Cruz. You can let me know if we have sound. Also let me know if we have an echo. I think some adjustments will have to be made. But let's give this a play, because here's Ted Cruz talking directly to the Iranian people.
Talk directly to the people of Iran who are standing up, who are demonstrating incredible bravery, standing against the Ayatollah and the mullahs, standing for freedom. Thank you for your courage. You need to know America stands with you. America stands with your fight, and President Trump has your backs. You are in our prayers. We are standing with you, and these tyrants will fall due to your incredible bravery. God bless you.
There you go. He's given a real motivational speech there and letting the Iranian people, letting them know to get back in there and keep fighting because we've got your backs. And since Donald Trump has walked this back, there's one senator who is particularly upset, which is Lindsey Graham. And Lindsey Graham really does, we're going to play the video in a second, but it really does look like in a movie where someone had one last opportunity that they thought they were going to save a deal, like a tragic movie, like a tragic, like, you know, it's almost feels like in Glengarry Glen Ross. If you guys never saw that movie, it is a great movie. But when the character knows that he's busted and he's going to be going to jail, that's the way this feels. This feels like he made a promise to some lizard overlords or whoever, and he promised them that this Iranian war deal was going to happen, and that he thoroughly convinced Donald Trump that this war was a good idea, and now he's got to return to someone and be like, I'm sorry, I wasn't able to pull it off. It almost feels like his soul gets its power from wars taking place, and now he has to find a new source to feed from because he didn't get the like, it's almost like a magical power for Lindsey Graham that as long as wars are taking place, he won't age and his butthole will be healed. And whatever demon that he pulls this power from, he now has to return and be like, I did not get you that war that I promised. And so here's Lindsey Graham, probably the most depressed I've ever seen him. I think he was fully juiced up and thought that he had convinced Donald Trump to take this fight. And I guess cooler heads prevailed and walked into the room and said, hey, we don't actually want to pick this one or fight it right now. And so here you go. Let's roll the clip.
There are a lot of headlines out there that are, in my view, not accurate. President Trump's resolve is not the question. The question is, when we do an operation like this, should it be bigger or smaller? I'm in the camp of bigger. Time will tell. I'm hopeful and optimistic that the regime days are numbered.
There you have Lindsey Graham basically holding back tears that he did not get the war that he was hoping to go back to his investors and tell them, I solidified this thing. You guys will have never seen war profits like this ever. I finally got you the big one. Me and McCain had been working on this our entire lives, and it's finally happening. We got this dope Donald Trump in the White House. He loves blowing things up, loves saying, hey, people are so afraid of us, they won't even fight back. And I think he's actually going to strike the guys again. We are a go. I finally sold this thing. And then have you seen him more depressed, Lindsey Graham? He's got to go back to Israel now just to reconvene and figure out how they're going to resell this thing, which, you know, maybe next week they'll return off Verizon and we'll have a war again. All right, let's move on to our next topic. Before we do, let's thank one of our sponsors, YoKratom.com, home of the $6 kilo. Only place in the entire world you can get an entire kilo of kratom for just $60. And on that note, if you guys want to support the show directly, RobBernsteinComedy.com, $5, and we're going to be doing more behind paywalled content, including second half of this show, or maybe tomorrow morning if I tire out because it's the fifth version of the podcast I'm doing today. We're going to get into some conspiracy stuff. All right, let's take a couple comments, and then we can move on to our next topic. We've got a hello from Atlanta. Hello back to you. We've got Scar. Why are you showing me a demon, Robbie? Why does it want to drink all that blood? You know it's a demon because it has a girl's name and it's a boy. Yeah, I guess there's something to that. Poor Lindsey, he just wants war. Yeah, thoughts and prayers to Lindsey Graham, who could not get the war that he desperately wanted. Phil D-Roll, cold as tits on a witch here. I'm in the ADKs. I don't know what the ADKs is. All right. Next is as Donald Trump, I guess, decided not to go to war in Iran. It looks like we might be going to war with Venezuela because the opposition leader, you know, actually showed up to the White House, thoroughly kissed my ass, and gave me a very shiny prize, maybe the shiniest. I don't know that anyone gets a prize this grand and shiny. Unless Venezuela has something way shinier for me, I think we're going to go with the opposition leader. That's the storyline that we're getting here, is that Donald Trump is so petty that he backed the current regime in Venezuela because I guess the people that the CIA recruited stole his Nobel Peace Prize, and he knew that he was deserving of that Nobel Peace Prize. And so to audition for the job, she showed up, she gave it to Donald Trump, and now she's hoping that he might change his mind and decide that we do need a full regime change in Venezuela, and that this lady who has given him the shiniest object to date is the one to do the job. Now, you know, ADD. Donald Trump might get a shinier object by someone by tomorrow and decide that he doesn't want to. Wouldn't that be great if the reason we didn't go to war with Iran was he decided he didn't want to move the boats from Venezuela because he just got a Nobel Peace Prize from this lady. And so we need to put more resources down there and actually back the, I guess, the CIA plan of this lady. All right, now let's move on to Donald Trump and the Federal Reserve claiming he knows nothing about the probe into Powell. And then he even says the quiet part out loud. This is from The Hill. I don't know anything about it, but he's certainly not very good at the job at the Fed, and he's not very good at building buildings, Trump said of the investigation. Trump has frequently pressured Powell to lower interest rates, but in NBC News interviews on Sunday evening, the president denied the subpoenas were related to the matter. No, I wouldn't even think of doing it that way. What should pressure him is the fact that the rates are far too high. That's the only pressure he's got, Trump told the news outlet. So there you go. Trump does not want to go after Powell for criminal activity. He just wants Powell to get out of that job because he is sure of the fact that interest rates are too high, and Donald Trump is failing the American people in this position by having the interest rates where they are. Now, I don't believe that Donald Trump had nothing to do with this. I don't believe that storyline. I'm very into going after the Fed for criminal behavior. Let's audit the Fed. Let's expose the storyline of how it's owned by private banks. Let's expose the storyline of how it creates credit asset bubbles, how it creates inflation, how it allows our government to afford wars, and how it essentially robs all of our wealth continuously through inflation and continues to prop up asset bubbles that helps the elites that already currently have money. I'm all for getting rid of the Fed. I'm all for investigating these people and finding out what kind of collusion exists between them and private banks and private individuals. I think all of that would make very juicy storylines. I don't think when you start going after them for overspending on a building with everything that goes on in our government, it does start to feel like Chinese people going after corruption, where you're kind of cherry picking the corruption of just the people you want to get rid of. And it's a standard that I mean, look at what's going on in Minnesota. You think the Fed's the only one that's overpaying on a building? And here's the thing, the Fed's in the know when it comes to inflation. So it could be that Powell was sitting there thinking, with everyone getting checks in the mail, now's our best. This is actually a good investment for the government, because a couple of years from now, no one's going to be able to afford to put a parking lot under a building. I mean, guys, this might be, you think it's your last time to strike in Iran. This is the last time for a building in Washington, D.C. to get itself some underground parking spaces, because with the way inflation's looking, no one's going to be able to afford to put in underground parking. So just think about the value that the Fed is making in its current investment with the with the knowledge of the inflation that's going to exist in the future. This might be one of the best government investments anyone's ever made. And honestly, if we could share all this information with every government agency, that you better build now, because we're drastically inflating the price of everything by sending checks to people and telling them to stay home during COVID. You know, we're giving shit to Powell for building himself a flashy building and then I guess lying to Congress about the price of the building. But the real storyline here is that this might have been one of the best government investments ever. All right, let's move on to another topic. Before we do, let's plug one more sponsor for the show, last sponsor plug, which is sheath.com. Greatest underwear that's ever graced the balls of man. Use promo code RYM. You get yourself 20% off. Sheath has come on to the podcast for another year. Right now, I am wearing the classic red and blacks. There you go. I got this pair of underwear like 5-6 years ago. And look at that. You see any holes in them? No, you see perfect elasticity, because this is quality underwear. Keeps everything cool, calm, and collected and in place. And if you're doing squats and eating too many donuts, I'm off the donuts at the moment. Actually, I'm shedding the LBs. I think you can already see it on my face. You can see my cheekbones are coming back in. But listen, we don't have to get too vain here. I'm trying to plug sheathunderwear.com. Use promo code RYM. Get yourself 20% off. Greatest underwear that's ever graced the balls, man. Worth the investment. Your thighs will thank me. Your balls will thank me. And in 4 years from now, when you don't have to buy new underwear because it's got all the holes in it, even your wallet's going to thank me. Sheath, it's worth the investment. They've got my full endorsement, and we appreciate all the support Sheath Underwear sends to our podcast. So go to sheath.com, promo code RYM, 20% off. Greatest underwear that's ever graced the balls of man. Even the people in the chat are going wild with Junior Toxicity vouching for Sheath and saying Sheath underwear is great. All right. I got to read this, and it's something that I've complained quite a bit about on the podcast. You know, a lot of times I have practical solutions to some of the biggest problems facing our country, and sadly, not enough government officials listen to the show. And sadly, I'm not the dictator that I can't just wave my magical wand of practical solutions and implement them and, you know, save our country a whole lot of problems. I've said this before. There's a big problem that when government exerts authority, there's not enough penalty for them being wrong. And so if they exert authority that they don't have, and then it takes 2 years to get to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court goes, yeah, you couldn't do that, there's really no penalty when they get things wrong. And so they're incentivized to exert as much authority as possible. I also think it's a really stupid system where you got your lawyer, and even if you know that you're not allowed to do something, you're like, hey, well, is there an argument we can make? Hey, let's just go for it. We've got 2 years before the Supreme Court that even looks at this, and we'll go argue it over there. If we find out we're wrong, all right, what are the landlords that couldn't kick tenants out over COVID actually going to do? And so in this case, Donald Trump exerted a tariff policy. A lot of people, even in this audience, were big fans of the tariff policy. And now the Supreme Court's taking a look at whether or not the president actually has the authority to do sweeping tariff policies. And one of the arguments that was being made in front of the Supreme Court is that you can't unwind his policy because it would be too expensive to the United States government that has taken in so much revenue from this tariff policy that if it had to return this tariff policy, it would be horrible for our government that can't afford to return this money. And I just think that that's not even an argument that should be on the table. If you guys do something that's wrong and then it's too expensive for you to undo it, that's not an excuse for, well, I guess it's legal now. I mean, this is like bailing out the big banks. It's like that incentivizes government to, if you're going to do something that's outside of your authority, make sure to go really, really big in it and make sure to spend as much possible money in that policy so that by the time the Supreme Court tells you you're not allowed to do it, there's too much money invested in it. And so you can't turn the other way because you go, oh, we lost too much money. It's an incentive for the president to just make sure that if you're doing something that you're not allowed to do, go really, really big. Be too big to fail. That's the way socialism works. Always make sure that you're too big to fail, because if you're too big to fail, then people will prop up the Ponzi scheme. And so, I mean, that was one of the arguments in front of the Supreme Court, was they had to take a look at if they could afford to unwind the policy. And that's got to be the worst incentive structure ever for the president, which is just make sure you go really big. Make sure you go really big so that we can't unwind what you did. So if it turns out that you weren't allowed to do it, the Supreme Court looks the other way and goes, he went a little bit too big with that illegal activity. There's nothing we can do now. He put too much resources into it. We're pot committed. And even though he's totally shouldn't do it and it's detrimental for some people, we're too far in, which is why I said you need like a secondary Supreme Court that basically rules on these things when you're implementing it, not that you implement it and then it goes through a series of courts and then it gets to the Supreme Court. But anyways, here's Donald J. Trump rallying the cause for, not that the tariffs are even, we'll see. I think he's saying that the tariffs are good here, but he's not rallying that the tariffs are within his authority. He's rallying that because the tariffs were so big and so widespread, we can't afford to unwind the policy. And so the Supreme Court better stand down and not rule against him, even if what he did was illegal, because we've already gone too far. Donald J. Trump, the actual numbers that we would have to pay back if for any reason the Supreme Court were to rule against the United States of America on tariffs would be many hundreds of billions of dollars, and that doesn't include the amount of payback that countries and companies would require for the investments they are making on building plants, factories, and equipment for the purpose of being able to avoid the payment of tariffs. Now, the second part of that's interesting, because Donald Trump is admitting part of the story here, which is that there's a lot of business planning and investment that goes into whether or not you're going to have government protections to make your investments pay off, which is why a lot of these green energy companies failed, is that 4 years after Joe Biden promised them free money that they wouldn't otherwise get in the marketplace, the protections went away, which included things like making sure that everyone was going to have a green car in the future. There's all sorts of shenanigans going on there. And a lot of the car manufacturers lost a lot on the EV vehicles that they went into, just thinking that government would basically mandate that everyone needed to be driving them, and so they would be profitable. That was the entire ESG score racket, and the ESG racket was that they thought government policies were going to come in and make things that weren't otherwise profitable. And, that's the problem with socialism, is you're not really making bets or not really making investments that you think suit the marketplace. You're making bets and investments that revolve around government policies and whether or not the government policies favor you. And that particularly does kind of limit investments, because when the government policies might change on the whim of Donald Trump's ADD, that he just decides to change his tariff policy, so you don't really know what investment you should be making, or if, he might have enacted a policy that turns out was illegal, and so you're like, I better wait on making any investments in this marketplace because I don't know if this tariff policy is going to stand. But anyways, Donald Trump's kind of admitting it, that, a lot of companies were only investing because they thought that his trade protection practices were going to create profits for them. And so if the tariff policies go away, they will no longer be profitable. But anyways, let's continue. When these investments are added, we are talking trillions of dollars. It would be a complete mess and almost impossible for a country to pay. Well, I mean, on the flip side of that was the putting in of the tariffs created all the same problems of trillions of dollars of people trying to figure out how to now either invest or not invest. So it really is a problem of his own creation of not allowing proper business planning by creating government legislation that changes the marketplace. But let's continue. Anybody who says that it can be quickly and easily done would be making a false, inaccurate, or totally misunderstood answer to this very large and complex question. Wouldn't that once again also be true when you just widespreadly introduce the policy? I mean, this was the complaint of the policy, is that you're going to ruin business planning and crush small businesses because no one's going to know how to invest. So, I guess he's kind of admitting the problem with instituting the tariffs as well. But now he's claiming that since the tariffs are in place, that's now the law of the land. And so everyone has re-planned all their business planning in line with the tariffs, not that people sat on the sideline looking to see how it would play out. And so therefore, we can't possibly have the Supreme Court unwinding this policy. It may not be possible, but if it were, it would be dollars that would be so large that it would take many years to figure out what number we are talking about and even who, when, and where to pay. Remember, when America shines brightly, the world shines brightly. In other words, if the Supreme Court rules against the United States of America on this national security bonanza, we're screwed. And so there you go. Hey, listen, even if what I did was illegal, I went too big with it, so you guys have to leave it alone. All right, let's take a couple of comments, and then we will move on to our next topic, which is the Clintons refusing to show up in front of Congress. All right, let's looked up to see Robbie showing ass. I don't actually think I showed my ass. I was just showing my beautiful sheath underwear. Phil D-roll. I'll end up trying those someday. I'm sure the old sheath underwear I've been hearing about for years. Well, go do it and use promo code RYM. Junior Toxicity, the tariffs are bullshit. I agree with you. Red Drum, pretty sure the Constitution says the president can't start wars or enact taxes. Yeah, and you would think that the Supreme Court exists to ensure that the president is in line with the Constitution. But, I guess sometimes if they don't want to criticize them, then our entire government structure doesn't work. And it's particularly nefarious for them to go, well, on this one, he went too big. So, then you're just saying we don't have checks and balances. We don't have the intended structure of our government. Junior Toxicity, sorry you stolen money you can't give back. All right, let's Red Rum. Socialism doesn't work because data always degrades away from the source. So a top-down structure makes the biggest decisions with the least accurate information. I'm okay with that. All right, so I want to read a couple pieces from this was the letter that Bill Clinton sent to Congress after he no-showed. You guys can tell me in the comments if you think that they will actually go after him and jail him. Bannon was jailed for not showing up to Congress. People have been jailed for being subpoenaed and, you know, supposed to show up to Congress. And so in this case, they wanted to bring Bill Clinton in to answer for his relationship with Epstein. Obviously, he didn't want to be there because he doesn't want a full day, 4 hours of answering questions. Why he was flying to where, if he was on the island, not on the island, might get caught in a lie. Why Jeffrey Epstein visited the White House as much as he did, what they were doing out in Thailand, nature of their relationship. Obviously, Bill Clinton does not want any more information getting out there about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, this was the letter that he posted on Twitter addressing why he wasn't showing up, saying, "It's not fair, guys. There were 9 other people, and the other ones got to just answer questions, and we'll gladly answer your questions behind closed doors. You just can't put us on television because, after all, the American people need justice and transparency, and if we're the only ones that have to come in front of Congress, even though we have the closest relationship, that's just not fair." But here, this was the one that I found to be most interesting. I'll go full screen so you guys can't see that I'm blind and have to walk in front of the computer to read it. There you go. Now you guys don't even know that I'm walking. Indeed, bringing the Republicans' cruel agenda to a standstill while you work harder to pass a contempt charge against us than you have done on your investigation this past year would be our contribution to fighting the madness. We have tried to give you the little information that we have. We've done so because Mr. Epstein's crimes were horrific. If the government didn't do all it could to investigate and prosecute these crimes for whatever reason, that shouldn't be the focus of blah, blah, blah. All right, I just want to reread that one line, which seems a little bit telling. We've tried to give you the little information we have. We've done so because Mr. Epstein's crimes were horrific. Now, what crimes are the Clintons referring to when they say that Epstein's crimes were horrific? Because, you know, as far as we all know, there's 5 million documents, and we on the internet like to say that he was likely an intelligence asset who was engaging in a pedophile ring, but I don't think he was actually prosecuted specifically for that. It seems to be the extent of people under the age 18 is not a very long list, nor is it a completely known list. And so, you know, I guess, like, in terms of the official story on Jeffrey Epstein, so he was found to, there was the thing in Florida that went away, which I think included people who were underage, in like the 16, 17 category. Guys, correct me if I'm wrong here. And then basically he gets the sweetheart deal. Later on, they lose a Freedom of Information Act. Everyone's like, what's going on with this Epstein guy? And the FBI, they go to basically recall their asset, recall all the evidence, clean up the mess. They put him in jail. The guy suicides himself in jail. But I'm just saying, if you're not reading internet conspiracy about the guy and you're just going with official storyline Jeffrey Epstein, what is official storyline? Like, if you just go with the U.S. government's official narrative of the crimes that Epstein committed, what are the horrific crimes that he committed? I'm just talking official record here. Like, I'm not talking about all of us on the internet saying, hey, I'm pretty sure that this guy's running a blackmail operation, and I'm pretty sure that he's abusing kids, and I'm pretty sure that other elites and officials were involved in it, and all the things that we like to say. But, you know, Clinton, he's in the know. So either he's referring to horrific crimes that, like, hasn't actually come out from government. Otherwise, I'm just curious to know what, like, because Donald Trump was saying that the thing's a hoax. We can move on from the thing. The guy killed himself. And prior to that, you know, prior to Thomas Massie getting all these papers and whatever else released, it's not like after the guy killed himself, they decided, hey, we're still going to expose all these crimes and we're going to expose the criminal network. So I'm just curious, doesn't that seem like a bit of an omission here? I mean, it's the classic, we're even more concerned than you are. That's always what happens when something happens on someone's watch and then they turn around. I'm even more concerned about this than you are. And then like Bugs Bunny, they just join the picket line with you. It's like if you were protesting a factory that wasn't paying you well enough, And then the boss came outside to the picket line and said, I am even more upset about the low wages for the employees here than my employees are. That's the trick they always pull in government. The second we find out about something horrible that happened on their watch, they're even more upset about it than we are. But here you have it. Bill Clinton himself saying that he would like to see this entire situation muckracked because Jeffrey Epstein, according to Bill and Hillary Clinton, engaged in, what was the exact line? We have the information we have. We do so because Mr. Epstein's crimes were horrific. Isn't that incredible? We have an admission from Bill and Hillary Clinton here, an acknowledgement that Mr. Epstein's crimes were horrific. And now you would also think if you had any information or knowledge in any capacity whatsoever, and you are interested in the well-being of the American public, then wouldn't you want to come forward? Wouldn't you want to give all the information that you had? Because after all, you guys are acknowledging that this man engaged in horrific crimes, and you at one point in your life had a personal relationship with him, and now you're not going to make good on this? I mean, how much time does Bill Clinton have left on the face of the earth? You were friends with the guy who engaged in horrific crimes, and you're not going to do more to make sure that the American people get justice? And if he engaged in horrific crimes, do you think that there were any accomplices to these crimes and that maybe we should go after those individuals? All right, here was the second page. I skipped the first page. I think this was the third page of the letter. And there were a couple other things that I noted. Let's see what I noted, because I don't remember. I don't know what I remembered. Your work to learn why and prevent that from happening ever again. There's no evidence that you are doing so. Instead, you have forced the victims to relive their painful experiences while doing little to give them and everyone else what's deserved, truth and justice. There is no plausible explanation for what you're doing other than partisan politics. Once again, they're even more concerned than we are. No one cares more about the Epstein's victims than Bill Clinton. He realizes that what happened to them was horrific, and he would love nothing more than for the government to serve justice and ensure that anyone who is involved with this is punished so that these victims can get their retribution. But government making the information available and digging into the storyline is actually only harming the victims. It's quite a storyline. It's quite a spin. You got to give them credit for it. You have asked what we know. To answer your inquiry, we are providing you with the same or more than 7 of the other 8 individuals, which is great. The other individuals, I don't know what information they provided, but the Clintons, in writing this very letter and condemning them for, being asked to testify in front of Congress when they're even more concerned than anyone else, is them providing more information than the other individuals. You really got to respect the legal skills of the Clintons. Individuals you subpoena regarding the handling, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what that line was. You will direct your committee to seek to hold us in contempt. You may even release irrelevant decades-old photos that you hope will embarrass us. You will say your caucus and the speaker and the president are behind you. Let's skip the last one. We are prepared to make our case to your 45 committee members, and if need be more importantly, we will also defend ourselves in the public arena, ensure that this country knows exactly what you are doing and why you are doing so instead of helping the American people who need this Congress's work and protection. All right, so essentially what the Clintons are doing is they want to stay off, of television. And they don't want to have to tell this story in front of the TV cameras. And so I think they're trying to negotiate at least doing this behind closed doors so that they don't look horrific on television. On the same note, though, they're pleading. It's interesting because I guess they're kind of putting Congress on the spot of, do you really want to jail previous presidents? And I think after what they tried to do with Donald Trump, this is a new time period. You guys did everything you could to keep the guy out of office. You defied the social norms of not going after previous presidents, and you changed the game of how people will utilize political power. You also changed the game a little bit when Joe Biden used the auto pen to give preemptive pardons. And so the idea that, we're just not going to even give a hard time to previous presidents. I think the Democrats already defiled that norm. And I don't know. I'm going to go to the chat. You guys tell me. Do you think that the Republicans might walk back pressing Bill and Hillary Clinton just because they don't want to, have that storyline of that they're getting retribution against a previous political dynasty in this country? Because it would seem to me like Bill and Hillary Clinton don't have nearly as much Democratic support as what Donald Trump had Republican support. And as they are involved in the storyline and clearly didn't show up in Congress, they clearly did something wrong. The Donald Trump storylines were, oh, he took these papers he wasn't supposed to take, and we're all like, bullshit. Even recently came out like a month ago that the FBI was saying that there wasn't enough criminality to be going to his house, and they decided to do so anyways. But I kind of agree with Junior Toxicity here of Republicans always fold. It would seem to me that they could get away with jailing him, and I don't think that the Democrats are going to be able to win that fight of, oh, well, maybe with everything else going on, they'll play the Donald Trump dictator card and look at what he's doing to all of the noteworthy Democrats and making sure that they're not out here opposing him. But I think the Republicans could get away with jailing Bill Clinton, but Bill Clinton's definitely putting the ball back in their court of being like, you really want to send me to jail over this? And then let's listen to the cattle auctioneer describing what comes next for Bill Clinton as he defied the subpoena. And that is not up on the screen, so you guys can't see it. Give me a second. We'll have it back up. Here we go.
We will move next week in the House Oversight Committee markup to hold former President Clinton in contempt of Congress.
Pretty big news from the Hill, but that's not what I find.
Oh, yeah. I pulled this video not for that. I pulled this because you've got Dana Rashface playing the new Instagram game, getting right up in front of the camera, trying to create content that will appeal to the kids. Doesn't realize she's a 60-year-old lady. She doesn't want the camera right in front of her face. Maybe pull it back a little bit. But here you got Dana Rashface, and here's her pitch or her spin. Which is not going to be, hey, listen, this is a tragic storyline, and even the Bill Clintons are saying that Epstein engaged in criminal behavior. And so as they have an affiliation, they should have to answer for this, and the American people deserve transparency. Of course, that's not going to be her angle. So let's hear what her angle is.
Find the most fascinating at this moment. It's how Bill and Hillary Clinton responded. Every person has to decide when they have seen or had enough and are ready to fight for this country, its principles, and its people, no matter the consequences. For us, now is that time. That is the key premise of this really long letter. They could have made it just about the testimony that the committee asked them to come and give, but they decided to go well beyond that, intentionally so. Continue to abet the dismantling of America, and you will learn that it takes more than a wrecking ball to demolish what Americans have built over 250 years. They know that Democrats want to fight, and they know that they're now in a position to help lead that. This is still something that is unusual from a former president, to have this kind of pushback and to dive into the politics this way. It's kind of even Trumpian to say, okay, I'm going to take this on and I'm going to play at your game. And how this is going to play out is going to be determined by how they set the tone in this.
There you go. There's no condemnation for the Clintons. There's no condemnation for the government and its lack of transparency over Epstein. There's no rooting for more Epstein transparency. There's just cheerleading for the Clintons and that they're defying the wishes of the Republicans right now and hoping that it sets up a bigger fight. Did CNN want civil war? Make that a headline. Is CNN pushing for civil war and backing the Clintons as they defy a subpoena? Throw that out there. Kind of hopped into my Mark Levin impression there. All right, we got a lot more to cover. And I have no idea what this video is, so let the producer man play it, and then we'll comment.
We are going to do something on Greenland, whether they like it or not, because if we don't do it, Russia or China will take over Greenland, and we're not going to have Russia or China as a neighbor, okay? I would like to make a deal, you know, the easy way, but if we don't do it the easy way, we're going to do it the hard way.
It's amazing to me, I've already commented on this, that there seems to be no conversation of morality. It's just, we want that thing, we're bigger, we're going to take it, and we can do this the easy way or the hard way. I mean, just literally saying the mafia line right out loud on television. The thing that usually isn't said out loud, that we're out here going, oh, look, he put a gun on the table with the Venezuela thing, and now he's basically threatening people, we're going to take your shit. So do you want to give it to us, or do you want us to come and take it? And so here you have him saying straight up, easy way or the hard way. I also just think, like, the idea, well, you know, there's a lady there and she was going to be raped, so I might as well rape her first. Or someone was going to steal money from that old lady, so, you know, might as well be me stealing the money from the old lady. And what evidence do we have that Russia or China were just taking Greenland? I mean, let's see China take Taiwan first. If China takes Taiwan, you could be like, ah, shit, they're going up, they're scooping things, so race is on. I guess we're in season, I don't know what, of Earth, and now it's empires grab whatever they want, and so the other people are grabbing stuff, and so they're grabbing it, so we might as well grab it first. We're going to be nicer to the people over there, but they're going to be grabbed anyways, so someone, you know, we might as well be the one to grab it. They're being grabbed. They're there for the taking. Someone's going to take it. Might as well be us because we need it and we want it. And firstly, I'd like to see a little more evidence of the fact that Russia and China are just going to go and take Greenland, and that I guess NATO and the U.S. doesn't have the power and might to cut some deals and keep them from just taking Greenland. But this is Donald Trump's newest claim, is that Greenland's just sitting there looking all sexy. Somebody's going to take it, and it might as well be us. And all the newspaper articles, it's no talk about whether or not this is actually in our interest, and whether or not, you know, there's an old video making the rounds of what's his name, McConnell, basically saying, you know, Greenland's pretty chill, and whatever we want from them, they'll basically just give it to us. The idea that we got to take them is a little ridiculous, and we've got a lot of partners in NATO. Not that I'm a fan of NATO, but he was like, you're just going to basically disrupt all of our partnerships seizing this thing, and we could have everything there that we want anyways. Now, what's interesting to me about Greenland, and I just did a little bit of pocket math on this, is that it does seem like if we wanted to buy it, it would be pretty easy. I mean, the way I see it is that we spent $200 billion on the Ukraine war, and so you could give $1 million to every single resident of Greenland. Here's what you can do. You can let them all keep their houses. They can all keep whatever their areas are. They can keep the whole country. You give, here's the offer. You give each one of them $1 million and 5% royalties and whatever we're taking out of the country. We're going to spend all the money on investing, and whatever public companies you get 5%. Whatever money's being made off of the resources, or maybe you want to go up to 10%. You think that's more fair? $1 million off the bat and 10% royalties on basically every mineral, every oil, everything that gets developed that we thought that this was an important resource. And the idea that that's unaffordable to the United States government, firstly, they're saying that the minerals and resources in the area are worth $4.1 trillion. So if this thing is so important to the United States government, why don't we at least just make this offer first before we're making all sorts of threats? It could be if you turn around and then maybe what's the other country that currently Denmark apparently owns it? 5%, basically $1 million to every resident there. And, you know, Denmark, then there's military bases over there. So the U.S. is going to stay in NATO, and Denmark can have 5% of the profits as well. And we're going to do all the investing. And this was from Twitter Gronk, but basically, I mean, it's estimated that there's $4.1 trillion worth of value out there. And so the break-even point on profitability of giving $1 million to every single person and 5% royalties on the money that comes out of any of the investments that are made out there would be $1.1 trillion. So even if the estimate of the value of Greenland is overvalued by 75%, I think that's the math, or you could say it's actually only worth 25% of what they estimate, it does seem like purchasing it could be done for cheaper than our average war. All right, here we go. Oh shit, surprise Robbie while driving. Damn, I'm late for the technical difficulties. Well, let me tell you, there was a legendary amount of technical difficulties on this episode, and until I delete the previous live streams, you can catch 4 episodes of Run Your Mouth technical difficulties. CT Bob 123. Now, Canada is going to start importing 49,000 EV cars this year, going up to 79,000 a couple of years. Forget U.S. EVs. China's are subsidized and cheap and knockoffs, but better than Texas. All right, I don't know why that's relevant. OG Matzo Balls. Maybe we should take Canada with Carney's WFS flirting with NWO through China. Also, don't know what that comment was about. All right, I think we got a couple more topics here. All right, here's a fun one. This is not as political, but it kind of ties into politics. I was sad to see that Bob Weir died last week. If you're not familiar with Bob Weir, he was Jerry Garcia was, I would say, frontman and leader of the band, at least since Pigpen's death. If you really want to go down the Grateful Dead archive, Ron McNearman drank himself to death with Janis Joplin, and he was kind of like the original real leader of the band. And then the band survived his death. They went through a numerous amount of keyboard players after that. And I think everyone kind of recognized that it was Jerry Garcia's band. But, Bob Weir put out the record Ace, put out a couple solo records while the Grateful Dead was still existed. And a lot of the songs that they toured with were his songs. And then on top of that, he put out an album a couple years ago, Blue Mountain, had a song Going Gone, a couple other ones in them that were truly quite excellent. Anyways, Bob Weir passed away. I was, I got to say, I don't really love going to the arena concert shows anymore. It's like I used to go to every Giants home game, and then at some point I stopped playing football, and then you become an old man, and the idea of like sitting in the parking lot and the traffic and this, you're like, I'd rather just stay home. That's just kind of what happens as you age, is that you see, it used to be none of those hassles bothered you, and just going out and having fun was more important, and all that other shit, I don't know, you'd drink through it, you'd stomach it, you wouldn't care. But I would say a big part of my childhood, which when I say childhood, I kind of mean like the high school and college years, like 16 to 24, going to see the Dead in its different variations was those were some of the best moments of my life. And the amount of different variations of this band I saw all the years. I saw him with Rat Dog, saw him with Further, saw him with Dead and Company. In some ways, Phil and Friends was a little bit more my jam. But I mean, I've seen, and it closing the door on what was a really great era of life, and some really, some of my funnest moments was kind of going to those shows. I always loved their music, will still listen to their music. And it was sad you know what I mean? It's like, for all the times that you didn't go to a show and you're like, I'll never get that experience again. Did get to catch them once as Dead and Company at the Sphere, and it was incredible. But I was like, I can't afford to do that again, or fly to Vegas and do that again. And it's just one of those things. You're like, all right, that's the end of that. And so, anyways, really like that. I've been a big Deadhead forever, and it's amazing the people that you don't get along with in life, how they see everything differently. And so I read the New York Times morning newsletter every morning. I read very few of their articles, but I'm curious to see the broad strokes of what they're reporting on and how they're framing it in the headlines. And then every once in a while, an article will make it here just to kind of parody what they're doing. I could not believe that for what Bob Weir accomplished in his life, and for how massive of, a band they were, and how hard he worked over the years, their obituary to him was about the fact that he wore short shorts on stage. I mean, you're talking about an American institution of what a lot of people, it is part of their American experience, being a fan of the Grateful Dead. And then you reduce the guy to the fact that he wore his short shorts on stage. I'm not saying he didn't wear short shorts. I'm not saying I wasn't a fan of his short shorts. It's just, it's just amazing to watch the New York Times get an obituary wrong for, someone. There's a lot of things that you could actually comment on, and they decided to focus on his earlier year styles and the fact that he wore short shorts on stage. Junior Toxicity saying Robbie is the youngest old man. I know I've been an old man. I've been a divorced Vietnam vet basically since I was back in high school, and chose, instead of showing up to high school, to drink in my dorm room and read the New York Post. So yeah, that's an accurate statement. All right. And now, I didn't watch the entire Tim Walz in front of Congress, but I did catch this one moment, and I believe that it is very worth highlighting. And, you know, hopefully they go after Walz for criminal behavior, as he just, I was just trying to, you know, he's going to go off how he was just trying to be compassionate. And, you know, there was nothing they could do. They were defrauded, but we still have to have compassion. And if anything, we've already talked about it. It's proof that the fact that the socialism doesn't work. You guys pitch us on that you're going to be a better steward of wealth and you're going to be better at distributing the resources. And then you spend it on massive amounts of fraud, which would be proof of the fact that you guys are not actually capable of implementing even your policies of compassion. But this was a particularly interesting moment that would seem to showcase that they were very aware of what was going on and were, you know, trying to brush it under the rug. Let's roll the clip, producer man.
Audit happened, end quote. It sounds like Governor Tim Walz's Department of Human Services may have been fabricating evidence by creating documentation after the fact to mislead voters, to mislead auditors. This new report noted that one grantee who received nearly $680,000 from this agency for 1 month's work, but could not provide any documentation or proof that any work was actually completed. What's more, and this is the kicker, the report notes that the grant manager who approved this money left the agency within days of approving the grant to take a job with the very same grantee that they approved money for.
By the way, that alone, that right there is a pretty wild story, is you approve a giant grant and then immediately go to work for the company you approved a grant for. But this next one is from, you know, one of their expert witnesses documenting the fraud. And let's give this a listen because it's also pretty rich.
Very quickly, Representative Roberts, have you...
Hold on, I gotta pull this back on the screen. Give me a second. Here we go.
Ever seen anything like this in your time as a member of the Minnesota's Fraud Prevention and State Agency Oversight Policy Committee?
We have heard whistleblower reports of backdating and falsification before, and we also have a record of earlier in the CCAP, the child care fraud, where they would allow the providers to submit records far after the investigation and accept them as true. So clearly this has been a pattern at the agency and it's unacceptable.
Unbelievable. And we want to work with you. We want to work with these whistleblowers. We're serious about this. The Trump administration's on the ground. We want to catch these people and we want to put them behind bars, and we want to hold any politician that participated in these schemes accountable. Representative Hudson, who's to blame for this dysfunction?
Well, the blame can go around quite a bit, but as Tim Walz himself said, the buck stops with him.
Representative Robbins, do you have any examples of how the Walz administration blocked investigators from moving forward with high-priority fraud investigations?
Yes, we do, Mr. Chairman. I've met with whistleblowers and gotten documents from them about how after the original CCAP whistleblower report came out in March and April of 2019, subsequent to that, there was an Office of Inspector General within DHS that had investigative authority to do surveillance, warrants, and seize electronics, and they were shut down. They were told they could no longer do criminal investigations. They were told they could no longer meet with the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension agents that were assigned to them without supervisor's approval. And instead, when they found one of the other members talked about how they changed the language. They went from calling it fraud to calling it overbilling. And they created an overbilling committee to all the investigative agents now couldn't do criminal investigations, and they had to flag issues of overbilling, and then a committee would decide if any of that overbilling would be recouped.
Committee appointed by Walz?
No, appointed within DHS.
Oh, appointed by the...
I love that. Don't call it fraud. Call it overbilling and sweep it under the rug. We're trying to keep these communities happy so that, I don't know. I don't even know what the agenda is. All right, last topic real quick, and then we're going to switch over to the subscriber stream, which will start only a couple minutes after this podcast. We'll start a fresh stream for it, and we're going to delve into some crazy statements made by other people that I don't want to criticize on the public podcast. There you go. There's a juicy pitch. We're going to go to the deepest, darkest corners of the internet and delve into things that hopefully only 4 or 5 subscribers will hear. So if you guys are interested in that, robbernsteincomedy.com, subscribe, and the episode will continue probably for another half hour or so. All right, so last article for today. Trump threatens to send federal troops to quash Minneapolis protest against ICE. And it's beginning to look a little bit like, I don't know that we're already, far into the 5th episode for today. So my words might not be as poetic as they usually are, but it feels like Donald Trump went in there looking for a fight. And so he had masked ICE agents in basically residential areas or other places that would rile up the people that live there. And listen, imagine if when they were rounding up the January 6th people, large groups of individuals came to protest them being taken off to jail, and they fought with the police over it. I think the conservatives were actually smart enough not to do that because they understood the problem, the power of a democratic government. They're not as cocky. And we all saw at the time that they were trying to create this title of domestic terrorists. And so, there were no protests for don't round up the January 6ers. We were in front of their homes. Maybe we should have been, but we all know where that would have gone. And the Democrats are not as smart. And listen, Donald Trump, there's probably a smoother way for him to go about doing deportations and having people in areas where and listen, like I said, it's not just a states' rights thing of that this state gets to decide, well, we like having these people here because they're taking federal funds. And, if you were to just fly people into your state and then they go to the next state, well, that doesn't work because we're a full country here. So you kind of can't just make the decisions in this case for what you guys prefer as your lifestyles over there, because it does affect everybody. However, the implementation of officers who are not looking as though they have an interest in de-escalating and really looking like they're looking to pick a fight and shove it down the people's throats over there is starting to feel like maybe he's trying to ramp this thing up and send in the National Guard. And I guess really, display his might a little bit, flex his muscles, and ram it down the Democrats' throat, which, as we saw when the Democrats overstepped in terms of prosecuting Donald Trump, and there were even assassination attempts on him, I think there's just a general sense of fairness in this country, and that we don't like when one team is in power, that they are vindictive in going after the other side, and that we do all kind of have to get along in this country. And I don't know, this just kind of feels like the little bit of the authoritarian flavor of going in there, picking a fight, going, hey, there's an emergency here, I'm sending the military in. And I don't think any of us love the idea of occupied forces that are the military or these other branches of the government asking us for identification. We might all be for deportations, and I think that there is a more sophisticated way to do it. But this is starting to feel a little bit like maybe they were tactful in the way that they went about this and trying to pick a fight and actually trying to escalate the situation to showcase who's in charge. I run this country. All right, we'll take a couple comments here. We got Runaway Slav saying no illegals equals no ICE. Chase them out. Certs VA, the Minnesota ICE thing is entirely intentional theater. Plenty of stuff to do before resorting to street grabs. Yeah, I agree with you on that. Afix, the internet tried to remove middlemen, my client/server to your server, and yet AOL's admin manager and middlemen still persist. Zuck middlemen's, your chats, Google middlemen, your netting, etc. I'm sorry, I don't follow you on that one. However, I don't know if this is a solution. In the future, I do think we are going to migrate the live chat off of my website, and that's where I'm going to take comments from. And on general episodes, that will be entirely free. But I do want to incentivize people to actually be on my site and direct the traffic there. And I'm working on getting all my other content up on the site as well, so that if we end up in another environment of censorship, all of my stuff is somewhere. And at least the people that currently know who I am, know where to find it. Certs VA, probably a number of undercover feds among those agitators. That would not surprise me either. All right, guys, that is the end of the episode for today. Going to start up in about 5 minutes. If you guys want to hang out with me, got a whole bunch of clips I'm going to comment on. Be a little bit more casual over there. RobBernsteinComedy.com, and we'll take live comments as well. Go check it out. It's all